You've probably heard that bond ETFs are the safe part of an investment portfolio, but some investors don't realise that picking the wrong one can actually lose you money. So today we're diving deep into the top 5 most popular bond ETFs on Trading 212, and I'll share the 4 pieces of criteria to look out for before investing. And I'm also going to share some surprising new research about whether having bonds in your portfolio could actually be a mistake. Okay, to understand bond ETFs, for the next 2 minutes we need to remove our mindsets away from being an investor and instead to start thinking like a bank. Because when you buy a bond, that's exactly what you're doing. You're lending out money to someone and in return they pay you interest, almost like an IOU. Now in the old school way of buying one single bond, that's like lending £1,000 to a random guy, let's call that guy Dave. Now if Dave has his life together, he'll pay you back and with the interest. But if you later find out that you've lent money to a dodgy Dave and he goes broke, then your £1,000 is gone forever. And this is where bond ETFs become useful, because it's like splitting up that £1,000 and then lending it out to 100 different Daves in order to spread your risk. Some of these Daves are governments like the US or the UK. Some are companies like Apple or Meta. Now if there's 1 or 2 dodgy Daves that can't pay you back, I'm thinking Greece in 2012 or Argentina in 2014, then hopefully you won't notice too much because you've still got 98 other hopefully reliable Daves that are paying you back your interest. That is the power of a bond ETF. You trade the risk of relying on one entity for the safety of a crowd of different entities, almost like a curated list of IOUs. Now to assess how reliable all of these entities are, then they usefully also have a rating. AAA to BBB is investment grade, and this refers to stronger creditworthiness. But then you also have a speculative grade, which is anything from BB to a D. These are where you might find a few more of those dodgy Daves, which are also referred to as junk bonds. Finally, here's another thing that beginner bond investors can also sometimes get confused about. When lending money to a real Dave, eventually he pays you back your money and the loan ends. This is also referred to as a maturity date. But the difference with a bond ETF is that it never finishes. It's almost like a revolving door. When the maturity dates come up, then new bonds are put into the portfolio. This means that you don't wait for the payday at the end, you just hold the ETF and then you collect something called the yield, which is the interest that is paid out to you, usually on a monthly basis. Okay, so enough talk about Dave and whether he's dodgy or not. Now let's talk about those top 5 most popular bond ETFs. But before I do so, guys, I've partnered up with Trading 212 for today's video, and they are kindly offering all of my subscribers 1 free fractional share valued up to £100 when you click on the QR code here, or click on the link down in the description below and open an account with them. Or alternatively, if you have opened an account within the past 10 days, you can also use the promo code Mitch, and you just need to deposit £1 into your investment account and you'll still qualify for that free fractional share. Thanks again to Trading 212 for sponsoring this video, and now let's dive into those ETFs. Okay, so here are the most popular fixed income or bond ETFs over on Trading 212. Now I must say at the top of the video here that just because they're the most popular doesn't necessarily mean they're the best bond investments that you can make. There's no guarantees here, so always make sure that you go and do your own research. Okay, let's start off with the 5th most popular bond ETF on here, which is the iShares GBP Ultra Short Bond ESG SRI Distribution Fund. That's a little bit of a mouthful, so let me explain exactly what that means. iShares is the issuer. The GBP bit is obviously it's priced and denominated in sterling, as you can see from it being priced at £5 and just a few pennies. Which also, whilst the price also seems volatile, what you can actually see that it's only actually moving by fractions of a percentage point on any given day. Ultra short bond is a short maturity date, typically less than 1 year. ESG stands for environmental, social and governance, which takes me back to my A-level business days. And then we've got SRI, which stands for socially responsible investing. Now, in terms of what this bond tracks, if you click on the 3 dots at the top right hand side, click into instrument details, and then if you click into the key information document, we'll be able to understand a little bit more about the fund. Here are the highlights. The index measures the performance of sterling denominated investment grade ultra short fixed income securities, including corporate bonds, quasi-sovereign bonds, sub-sovereign bonds and covered bonds. Now these are different types of bonds, quite technical, but let's go through them. So you've got corporate bonds, which are issued from businesses. You've got quasi-sovereign bonds, which are those that are issued by government-backed entities. We've then got sub-sovereign bonds, which are issued by local governments. And then the last one was covered bonds, which is debt that's issued by banks and is secured by a pool of high quality assets. It gets quite technical, I know, but here are the top 10 issuers within the fund that make up a total of 32.78% of the fund's exposure, which includes a total of 175 holdings. You have got some well-recognised names in there like the European Investment Bank, Santander, Royal Bank of Canada and Lloyds Bank plc. Now, in terms of how these funds are rated in terms of their credit worthiness, you can see 70% of them are AAA, which is the highest creditworthiness score available. This is also reflected in the fund's risk score of 1 out of 7, which suggests lower risks, but typically lower returns too. In terms of those returns, well, if we flick over to the next page, you can see the fund has returned anything from 0.2% to 5.4% over the past 5 years up to 2024, which is probably a reflection of the rise in global interest rates since 2021, which have possibly made these funds a little bit more attractive to investors. The current published dividend yield on this fund is 4.64% and is paid on a semi-annual basis. Now, just for a point of clarity, Trading 212 calls this the dividend yield, but for a bond ETF, this is just the interest or the distributions of the underlying bond which are paid to you. In terms of the ongoing charges, well, this fund has an ongoing charge figure of 0.09%, which means for every £10,000 invested, it's about £9 in fees. Okay, now let's move on to the fourth most popular bond ETF, which is the iShares USD Treasury Bond 7 to 10 year distribution fund with the ticker symbol IGTM. Now, you may be a little bit more familiar with this terminology when it comes to bond investing, but if we refer to the key information document, it states the index offers exposure to US government bonds with a remaining maturity from 7 to 10 years. This is an intermediate duration bond, and therefore, as it states, this fund is suitable for medium to long-term investment. Now, one thing to be aware of with this bond fund is that despite it being priced in pounds and pence within the Trading 212 app, you are still exposed to the FX rate difference between the Great British Pound and the US dollar. And that's because, as we can see in that key information document, the shares are denominated in US dollars. And therefore, if the US dollar continues to weaken against the Great British Pound, as we've seen in most recent years, then it could negatively impact returns. On the topic of risks, this fund has a risk score of 4 out of 7, so it's middle of the road really, but it is substantially higher than the previous bond fund that we just discussed. This could be because of the creditworthiness of the US government now only being AA rated and not AAA rated, which could be making the difference here. Along with the fact that the US government have an absolute mountain of debt, and there are some commentators out there that would be questioning the creditworthiness of the US government over perhaps the medium to long term. Now, to see whether the returns adequately offset the risk, well, as you can see, it's not perhaps been as stable as you would expect a traditional bond investment to be. Since 2015, the fund has provided total returns of just 9.5%, far below the rate of inflation, as perhaps representative of some of the US economic and monetary headwinds that they're facing into. However, the current dividend yield on this fund is being displayed at 4.15% and is paid on a semi-annual basis. Now, in terms of fund charges, it's 0.07%. So for every £10,000 invested, it's £7 in fees. Now we're in the podium positions. So up in third spot, we have the iShares JP Morgan USD Emerging Market Bond, which is the ticker symbol EMHG. If we flick straight to the key information document where it states that the index offers exposure to US denominated sovereign and quasi-sovereign entities from emerging market countries. So immediately I'm thinking two things to consider here. Firstly is the FX rate risk, and then secondly is the fact that we're lending money to emerging market countries and therefore the creditworthiness of them may be lower. So let's have a look at that now. Now, if you remember back to the credit quality ratings, anything below a BBB is considered speculative or non-investment grade, which you can see makes up 45.63% of this fund. In terms of who that money is being lent to, well, it's countries like Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Turkey, the UAE, Indonesia, and many others. With that, I was actually quite surprised to see that the fund's risk profile is scored a 4 out of 7, which is exactly the same as the 7 to 10 year Treasury bonds issued by the US government. With that then, let's take a look at the performance of this fund, which you can see has been volatile and very mixed since its inception in 2019, ranging anything between minus 19.5% to gains of 13.5%. But year by year, there really is little consistency on the yield here. And again, when we look at total returns here, it only actually equates to 9.5% over the 6 years shown, which averaged out on an annual basis is only just over 1.5% per year, which is not even keeping up with the rate of inflation. However, the current monthly dividend yield that's being shown right now is 5.74% on Trading 212. But of course, we do need to deduct charges as well, which for this fund aren't cheap, and they're currently at 0.5%. So every £10,000 invested, we're talking £50 in fees. Now into the second spot, we've got the iShares Euro High Yield Corporate Bond ESG Accumulation Fund with the ticker symbol EHYG. Now the big difference with this fund compared to the other funds that we've looked at previously is the fact that this fund is an accumulation fund. That means that any interest that's received is actually reinvested back into the fund itself rather than paid out to you as the bond holder. And you can see this clearly in the bond's price chart, which has steadily been increasing to the tune of 22% since late 2023. But in terms of what this fund is actually tracking, whether those returns are solid or not, well, now let's refer to the key information document. So it states the index measures the performance of euro-denominated sub-investment grade fixed-rate bonds issued by companies that form part of the Bloomberg Barclays Euro High Yield Index with a remaining maturity of greater than or equal to 1 year. So these are corporate bonds that have been issued from companies all around the world with particular concentration in the US, France and Italy at present, across a bunch of different holdings. Some of the companies I've actually not heard of before, but ones that I do recognise are SoftBank, Telefonica, Vodafone, Air France, Carnival, Nissan and Volvo. Now remember, one of the critical things that I mentioned here was that this fund was sub-investment grade. That means that all of the bonds held within this fund have a creditworthiness score, a credit quality, less than BBB. And as you can see, 83% of the fund's exposure is BB rated with varying maturity dates. With that, the risk of this fund sits at a 3 out of 7 on the risk spectrum, albeit it hasn't been operational for too long, so we don't have much in the way of past performance, with 2024 performance showing an 8.5% return and 2025 a return of 8%, showing somewhat consistency over the past 2 years, but we obviously don't have a long enough time horizon to really form a judgment of how consistent the returns will be from this fund. And with that, it's equally important to check the ongoing charge figure for this fund, which is 0.27%. So for every £10,000 invested, it's £27 in fees. Okay, so then into the first spot and the most popular bond ETF on Trading 212 is the Vanguard Global Aggregate Bond Accumulation Fund with the ticker symbol VAGS. This is another accumulation fund whereby the interest is reinvested and not distributed. This is almost like the FTSE All World Equity ETF but for bonds, with 11,776 bonds held within this fund. In terms of what this bond fund invests in, well, if we flick over onto the key information document, it states the index is a widely recognized benchmark designed to reflect the characteristics of the total global aggregated bond universe of investment-grade global government-related agencies, corporate and securitized fixed income investments with maturities greater than 1 year. A bit of a mouthful, I know, but in essence, I think what it's trying to say in simple terms is that it largely captures the global investment-grade bond market. So now let's take a look at its holdings. No idea if this is a bit of a theme here, but again, we've got the US and France that seem to be issuing a lot of debt based on the funds that we've looked at, with the US making up most of this fund, which is reflected mostly in US treasuries. You've then got the Federal Republic of Germany federal bond, which I'm not gonna lie, I had to Google translate, along with Japanese, French and UK bonds too. Out of interest, I also had to look at what a Fannie Mae pool bond is, and I discovered that it's some kind of mortgage-backed securities if you ever wanted a fun fact. Now in terms of the fund's credit quality, well, let's break it down. Most of it is AA rated, with much of the fund's allocation towards short to intermediate duration bonds of 1 to 5 years. That's reflected in a risk score of 4 out of 7, but in terms of returns, well, here are the numbers. It's another mixed bag, reflective of reasonably volatile global monetary policies over recent years, with the total return of 2.99% over the last 6 years. Which I've got to be honest is poor returns by any stretch, especially when we just benchmark it against the rate of inflation. This is of course without deducting the ongoing charge figure from this fund, which is 0.08%, so for every £10,000 invested, it's £8 in fees. So a real mixed bag in terms of the funds, the exposures, the risks and the returns, and admittedly some have more exposure to dodgy Daves than others. But now I wanted to talk about some of that research that I referenced at the start of the video that may actually suggest that investing in bonds could actually be a mistake. I found this 2025 research paper called Beyond the Status Quo by Scott Cederberg, where they've concluded, across a range of model specifications, the household's optimal weights are approximately 1/3 domestic stocks and 2/3 international stocks at all ages, with virtually no fixed income allocation. The optimal strategy stands in sharp contrast to the status quo investment advice favouring age-based stock bond portfolios. That's a very interesting take based on the research that they've done and data that they've collected based on the model portfolios that they've put together. And let me show you a couple of examples just to kind of demonstrate the point. They conclude that these models highlight the probability of financial ruin reduces significantly with the optimal strategy, as opposed to one that includes bills, which is just another word for bonds, whilst also providing more wealth at retirement, higher income replacement rate, and more wealth at the time of death too. This is contrary to perhaps what is most common and varies substantially to that of the approach that's taken from companies like Vanguard, for example. But I guess that's one of the great things about investing. It all comes down to personal choices which are built on our own risk appetite, time horizon, and overall investment objectives. Which I guess on that note, if you want to know what my personal investment choices are for 2026, then be sure to check out this video next. Subscribe to the channel whilst you're over here. With that being said, see you over in the next one.